All right, listen, I need to tell you guys about what just happened on ESPN NBA Today, because they dropped some absolutely massive news about the Golden State Warriors that changes everything. We thought we knew about their plans moving forward. The analysts were going in on the Warriors' situation after the Jimmy Butler injury, and then they started talking about a name that honestly makes so much sense when you really think about it: Domantas Sabonis. And the more they broke down why this trade could happen and how it would work, the more I was sitting there thinking, yeah, this is actually the perfect move for Golden State right now. So the segment started with the analysts discussing the current state of the Warriors and what life is going to look like without Jimmy Butler for the foreseeable future. And let me tell you, the mood was pretty somber at first. They were talking about how tragic it is to lose Jimmy, especially in the way that it happened. The man didn't even get a full calendar year with the squad. Him and Steph together were winning 70% of their games. The Warriors had really started to figure out a winning formula since mid-December, when they won 12 out of 16 games. Hey, what's up everyone? Real quick before we get into everything, that like button is literally what determines if this reaches hundreds or thousands of fans. Takes 1 second, but makes a huge impact on the channel's growth. Just smash that like button right now. It's the easiest thing you can do, but honestly, the biggest way to support this content. Every single like pushes this further. So hit it now. One of the ESPN analysts made a point that I thought was really important. He said there were a couple of additional winnable games in there too. Like the Clippers game where there was a missed Gary Payton goaltending call. If they get that call right, maybe that's 13-3 instead of 12-4. If they don't blow that game in Toronto, maybe they're 14-2. The point is, the Warriors were turning a corner. They were playing really good basketball. And then Jimmy goes down and everything changes. The analysts talked about Jimmy's impact on this team, and it was clear they had a lot of respect for what he brought. One guy said, watching that first half against the Raptors after Jimmy went out was like watching chickens with their heads cut off, trying to get the ball through the hoop. That's how much Jimmy meant to this team's offensive organization. His ability to bring together that second unit. His ability to lead alongside Steph and Draymond. All of that is gone now, at least for this season. But then the conversation shifted to what the Warriors can do about it. And this is where the Sabonis talk really started heating up. The ESPN analysts were discussing different trade targets and potential moves the Warriors could make before the deadline. And one of them brought up Sabonis as what he called an absolutely perfect fit for the Warriors' system. Let me break down why they think Sabonis makes so much sense for Golden State. First, they talked about his tactical fit with the Warriors' style of play. The Warriors have always valued ball movement, player movement, and high basketball IQ. Sabonis is one of the best passing big men in the entire league. He averages over 3.5 assists per game as a center, which is elite for his position. He would fit seamlessly into the Warriors' motion offense, where everyone touches the ball and makes the right play. Then they got into his presence in the paint. And this is where the analysis got really detailed. Sabonis is averaging over 11 rebounds per game this season. He's a dominant force on the glass on both ends. He can score in the post. He can finish around the rim. He gives you a physical presence that the Warriors have been lacking. Quinton Post has emerged as a solid rotation player, but he's not an all-star caliber center like Sabonis. The passing ability is what the ESPN analysts kept coming back to, though. They showed some clips of Sabonis making reads and finding cutters and hitting shooters on the perimeter, and one of them made the point that, with Steph Curry running around screens and relocating all game, having a big man who can find him in those moments is invaluable. Sabonis would essentially be a secondary playmaker for the Warriors. He would take pressure off Steph and Draymond to create everything offensively. One analyst brought up the experience factor and how important that is for a team trying to win now. Sabonis is an all-star. He's been to multiple all-star games. He knows what it takes to perform at a high level in this league. The Warriors' window with Steph and Draymond is closing. They need impact players who can contribute immediately. Sabonis fits that description perfectly. He's averaging over 15 points a game to go along with those rebounds and assists. That's legitimate production from the center position. The conversation then shifted to the bigger picture of what the Warriors front office might be thinking. The ESPN analysts talked about rumors that the Warriors are looking to form a new Big Three. The idea would be Curry, potentially Jimmy Butler when he returns, and Sabonis. That trio would give the Warriors three legitimate all-star caliber players who complement each other's game. Steph provides the shooting and gravity. Jimmy provides the perimeter creation and clutch scoring. Sabonis provides the interior dominance and playmaking from the post. But here's where it gets complicated, and the ESPN analysts spent a lot of time on this. The Jonathan Kuminga situation. For a long time now, as the analysts pointed out, Kuminga has dominated the conversation and discourse around the Warriors despite never making an all-star game and never really being one of the top three players on the team. He's a lightning rod topic. Some people love him and think he's the future. Others think he's never going to figure it out, and the Warriors need to move on. The ESPN analysts had different perspectives on Kuminga. One guy made the point that ever since Steve Kerr benched Kuminga, the Warriors won 75% of their game. That's a winning formula. The team plays better without him in the rotation for whatever reason. Maybe it's fit, maybe it's effort, maybe it's defensive engagement. But the results are what they are. Another analyst pushed back a little bit and talked about the confidence factor. He said, when you're a young player going in and out of the rotation, it absolutely affects your confidence. Having a short leash messes with your head. And we've seen Kuminga have games where he looks like a legitimate star and games where he looks completely lost. The inconsistency is maddening. But the consensus on ESPN seemed to be that the Kuminga experiment has run its course in Golden State. One analyst said he doesn't think it's salvageable at this point. Kuminga made choices to not play the way the Warriors needed him to. He did it for the first 5 games of the season and showed what he could be. Then he regressed, and whether that regression was due to injury or confidence or whatever else it happened, the results speak for themselves. This is where the Sabonis trade becomes even more relevant. If the Warriors are going to upgrade their roster, they need to have trade chips to move. Kuminga is their biggest trade chip. He's young, he's talented, he has potential. Other teams will be interested even if his value isn't at an all-time high right now. Packaging Kuminga along with other assets like draft picks or role players could be enough to land someone like Sabonis. The ESPN analysts then got into what GM Mike Dunleavy said at his recent press conference, and it was pretty brutal, honestly. When asked about Kuminga's trade demand, Dunleavy basically said, if you want to make demands, there needs to be demand on the market. That's the GM essentially telling a player publicly that his leverage isn't as strong as he thinks it is. It's cold, but it's the reality of the situation. One analyst made an interesting point about that quote, though. He said, maybe Dunleavy is saying that strategically. Maybe he's trying to drum up interest by making other GMs think they can get Kuminga on the cheap. And then, when calls start coming in from Dallas or New York or whoever else, you can play teams off each other and drive up the asking price. It's gamesmanship. And Dunleavy has shown he can make good moves. He basically got Jimmy Butler for Andrew Wiggins and a first-round pick. He brought back Anthony Melton. He drafted well in the second round. The man knows what he's doing. The conversation shifted to what a Sabonis trade might actually look like, and this is where it gets really interesting. The ESPN analysts were throwing out different scenarios and packages. One of them mentioned a potential 3-team deal that would involve the Kings, the Warriors, and maybe a third team to make the salary work. Sabonis is on a decent contract, but it's still significant money. You'd need to match salaries and figure out the logistics. The basic framework would probably involve Kuminga going to Sacramento, along with some draft compensation. The Kings have been a disappointing team this season, and there's been speculation they might shake things up. De'Aaron Fox has been mentioned in trade rumors. If the Kings decide to rebuild or retool around different pieces, then moving Sabonis for younger assets and picks could make sense for them. From the Warriors' perspective, you're giving up Kuminga and probably some first-round picks, but you're getting back a legitimate all-star who fits your system perfectly. That's the kind of move championship teams make. You trade potential for production. You trade upside for certainty. And Sabonis is a known commodity. You know exactly what you're getting with him every night. The ESPN analysts also discussed what this would mean for the Warriors' rotation and lineup construction. With Sabonis at center, your starting five would probably be Steph, DeAnthony Melton or whoever is playing the 2, Andrew Wiggins or whoever they have at the 3, Draymond, and Sabonis. That's a lineup with serious playoff experience and high-level talent at every position. Off the bench, you'd still have guys like Buddy Hield for shooting, Quinton Post as a backup big, the young guys like Will Richard and Brandon Pajimski. One thing the analysts emphasized is that Sabonis would help the Warriors immediately. This isn't a developmental project. This isn't hoping a young player figures it out. This is adding a guy who has been an all-star multiple times and knows how to perform in big games. With Steph Curry at 36 years old and Draymond Green at 34, they don't have time to wait for potential to turn into production. They need guys who can help them win now. The analysts also touched on what happens with Jimmy Butler and how that affects everything. Butler is essentially on an expiring contract now with 1.5 years left. The Warriors could potentially move him for additional assets if they wanted to fully commit to a rebuild around younger players. Or they could hold on to him, hope he recovers well from the knee injury, and bring him back next season alongside Sabonis and Steph. That's the big 3 scenario they were talking about earlier. If Jimmy comes back healthy next season, and you've added Sabonis in the meantime, suddenly the Warriors look like legitimate contenders again. You'd have 3 all-star caliber players in Steph, Jimmy, and Sabonis. You'd have Draymond providing defensive leadership and playmaking. You'd have a solid supporting cast of shooters and defenders. That's a team that can compete with anyone in the Western Conference. But the ESPN analysts were also realistic about the challenges. Jimmy is coming off a serious knee injury at age 35. There's no guarantee he returns to his previous level. Sabonis, while excellent, has never been on a championship team. Can he perform in the playoffs against elite defenses who will game plan specifically to stop him? These are legitimate questions that don't have easy answers. One analyst made a point that I thought was really smart. He said, even if this season is kind of cooked because of the Jimmy injury, the moves you make now are really about next year and beyond. If you trade Kuminga for Sabonis, you're not just thinking about the remaining 40 games this season. You're thinking about having Sabonis on your roster for the next 3 or 4 years. You're thinking about building around Steph for as long as he wants to play. You're thinking about what the Warriors look like in the post-Steph era and whether Sabonis is part of that future. The trade deadline is coming up fast. Less than 3 weeks away, according to the ESPN analysts. The Warriors have some serious decisions to make. Do they go all in and try to acquire someone like Sabonis to make one more run with Steph? Do they hold tight and hope Jimmy recovers and they can make a push next season? Do they start thinking about the future and accumulate assets for the next era of Warriors basketball? What seems clear from the ESPN coverage is that standing pat is not really an option. The Jimmy injury forced their hand. They have to do something. And if the reports are true that they're targeting an all-star caliber player like Sabonis, that tells you the front office is still in win-now mode. They're not giving up on this window. They're going to try to maximize whatever time Steph has left as an elite player. The analysts wrapped up the segment by talking about what Sabonis would mean for Steph specifically. Having a big man who can pass and create opportunities would make Steph's life so much easier. Sabonis would draw defensive attention in the post. He would make the right reads when defenses collapse on him. He would find Steph coming off screens for open threes. The two-man game between them could be devastating for opposing defenses. And defensively, while Sabonis isn't going to be Defensive Player of the Year, he's solid enough. He rebounds at an elite level, which helps end possession. He's big enough to contest shots at the rim. And with Draymond Green still on the roster, to quarterback the defense, you don't need Sabonis to be a lockdown defender. You need him to be competent and not a liability. He can do that. So that's everything ESPN NBA Today had to say about the Warriors and the potential Sabonis trade. It's a fascinating situation because you have a team that was playing great basketball and really turning a corner before their best player went down with an injury. Now, they have to figure out how to salvage this season and position themselves for the future. Sabonis represents a way to do both. He helps you now, and he helps you later. What do you guys think? Should the Warriors make a move for Domantas Sabonis? Would you trade Kuminga and picks to make that happen? And what do you think about the Warriors' chances of competing for a championship if they can put together that big three of Steph, Jimmy, and Sabonis next season? Let me know in the comments, because I genuinely want to hear your thought on all of this. Drop a like if you found this breakdown interesting and want me to keep covering the Warriors and what ESPN is saying about them. There's going to be a lot of movement over the next few weeks before the trade deadline, and I want to make sure you're informed about everything that's happening. Until next time, take care of yourselves.